Conspiracy theories.
So this journalist was kaboom, unalived with a car bomb because she exposed some government corruption. This story is wild. And crazy enough, it starts in 1903 with this guy, Teddy. And Teddy is president of the United States, and he really wants to unite the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans by building a canal. And so he bullies the country of Colombia into handing over some of their territory, and he has a canal built. Now this territory eventually becomes the country we now know as Panama. And that's great and all, but now Panama has a problem. It needs revenue, and in order to generate revenue, it creates tax laws that help foreign businesses dodge taxes in their home countries. Now, what does all of this have to do with a car bomb? We'll get there. But first, we gotta fast forward several decades to 1977, where this German lawyer creates this law firm there in Panama. And because of the tax laws there that I just explained, this law firm actually operates legally, but they're still kinda shady. Because their main thing is they basically help rich people hide their money. Now let's fast forward again to 2016, where something crazy happens. An anonymous whistleblower gets a hold of this shady-ass law firm's internal documents, and they leak them to the public. These documents are known as the Panama Papers. And these Panama Papers expose all kinds of shady shit this law firm's clients are doing. And these clients are very well-connected people, like businessmen and politicians, world leaders, all kinds of powerful people. In fact, there's a whole Wikipedia page dedicated to just the people exposed by these documents. And of course, these powerful people are now really pissed off. In fact, they're so pissed off that they're allegedly willing to murder people over this. But we'll get back to that. First, we gotta talk about this woman. Her name's Daphne. And Daphne, she's a journalist at a local newspaper living on the small island of Malta. And as a journalist, Daphne is actually pretty gangster as fuck. She's exposing all kinds of corruption in Malta. She's
I don't think she should have been doing all that. She know they were gonna come for her head sooner or later.
writing about criminals and drug traffickers, any kind of corruption in politics. Daphne is there covering it in her column. Here's the problem with that, though. Malta is a pretty small country, about 500,000 people. So it doesn't take long for her articles to start attracting the wrong kind of attention. And the people she's exposing and their affiliates, they start confronting her in the street, and they're sending her threatening letters. Sometimes they even show up to her house. And they also go after her legally, suing her for libel, essentially trying to bury her in lawsuits. One time, when she's not home, I guess some of them capture her dog and unalive it? And multiple times people try and set her house on fire. But despite all this, Daphne doesn't quit. Even though she knows she has a target on her back, she is determined to keep telling the truth. In fact, over time, she seems to get even more bold. Because in 2008, she decides to start her own blog. And unlike working at the newspaper, this blog will give her editorial control and all kinds of freedom to write whatever she wants. And here is where everything changes, because she starts going after really powerful people in Malta. And like, she starts writing about all the dirty money coming into the country and about all the politicians who let all this shady stuff happen. And of course, her blog blows the f*** up. Like, everyone's reading it. And I mean like everyone in Malta. I mean, she's averaging 500,000 hits a day in a country with a population of 500,000 people. But then, things get even crazier. Because it's 2016, and an anonymous whistleblower gets a hold of a bunch of documents affiliated with a shady law firm in Panama. AKA the Panama Papers. And as I said, these documents expose the shady business dealings of a bunch of very well-connected businessmen and politicians, and some of these powerful people exposed just happen to work in the Maltese government. And since Daphne is known for calling these turds out on their corruption, it is assumed that the anonymous whistleblower sends her the Panama Papers because now she has them. And using the information she gets from them, she exposes a huge scandal in Malta. That a member of parliament had been doing some shady business shit in offshore companies. Then she exposes that Malta's own prime minister, the guy at the very top of the government, that he and his wife were also doing some shady business shit out of an offshore company. She also exposes another huge scandal where the government had been selling Maltese passports in exchange for $1 million. Like, shit is out of control. But of course, now that she's blogging about all this, the backlash against her gets a whole lot worse. Suddenly her friends stop inviting her to places because they're afraid they'll get caught up in the consequences. A cafe she visits a lot suddenly gets raided by the police. And Daphne, she's always been totally brave about all this, but now she feels different. Now she's starting to get scared because she's starting...
Yeah, right. You shouldn't have been doing that. You should have been minding your own business.
To get full-on death threats. Not only that, the lawsuits against her are at an all-time high. Now she has 47 different libel cases pending against her. 47. But even so, nothing is more important to her than exposing the truth. So she just keeps on blogging. Until... one day in 2017, Daphne's at home writing her blog. Then she finishes her post and she leaves the house and she gets in her car because she's got an appointment to go to. But she doesn't drive very far when suddenly, kaboom, there's a huge explosion and her car goes up in flames. And then, boom, there's a second explosion. And of course, all of this unalives Daphne because someone had placed a bomb under her seat. And here is actually an image of her car afterwards. And I mean, as you can see, it's really messed up. There's like nothing left of it. Now, if you're thinking about how blatantly corrupt this all looks, I agree with you. But you know who else agrees with you? The people of Malta. Because everyone is shocked. And pretty quickly, there are huge protests in the streets, and people are pissed off, and they're holding up signs with Daphne's face on them. They want to know who ordered her assassination. In fact, it's such a big deal that they start calling on the Prime Minister to resign because of how he's handling this whole thing and what they see as his possible involvement. And in 2020, the Prime Minister of Malta, the leader of the country, actually resigns over this. That's how crazy it's gotten. Also, after some investigating, bam, 3 goons are arrested for Daphne's murder. Here's one of the guy's mugshot, and here's another guy's mugshot, and I don't have a mugshot for the third
Because she was just telling the truth.
guy, but here's a picture of him. Now, according to these goons, their beef with Daphne wasn't necessarily personal. They were actually paid 150,000 euros to plant this car bomb and carry out her assassination. So then you have to ask, so then who paid them? Who ordered Daphne's murder? Well, so far, all leads trace back to a wealthy Maltese businessman. A businessman who had once been exposed by Daphne in her blog when she got the Panama Papers. Allegedly, he ordered the hit. And then so police go to his yacht where he's chilling and bam, they arrest him. And I don't have his mugshot, but here's a picture of him where he totally looks like a Bond villain. In fact, he looks like a Bond villain in every picture I could find of him. Anyway, the 3 goons plead guilty, and one of them gets 40 years in prison, another gets 40 years in prison, and the third gets 15 years in prison. While the Bond villain-looking guy, he did go to jail for a while, but he's out now on bail, waiting for his trial. That is wild.
Yeah, he's not going to prison. He's rich.
So this kid ends up conning millions of dollars out of people by pretending to be a Saudi royal prince. Now his name's Anthony, and Anthony's around 18 years old, and he's kind of a turd. He's always in trouble. And one day in 1988, he starts stealing credit cards. And of course he'll run up like thousands of dollars on them buying stuff. But specifically, he likes to rent limousines, and he'll ride around in them, and when people are like, damn, who's this rich teenager? He'll tell them that he's a royal Saudi Arabian prince. And just to be clear, he's not a prince at all. He's not royal. He's not even Saudi Arabian. He's actually Colombian born, but raised in the US. But anyway, he eventually leaves Michigan, where he lives, and he moves over to California. And there, he starts pulling this con all over again. And he'll steal credit cards and pretend he's a royal Saudi prince, and he pulls this scam for a few years. However, you can only steal credit cards and commit fraud so many times before you finally get caught and they throw your ass in prison for a while, which is exactly what happens to him. But a few years later, he gets out, and now it's 1993 and Anthony is living in Miami. And there, he commits identity theft, and he steals someone's identity, and he moves into a luxury hotel, and he keeps this lie going. He tells everyone he's an important Saudi prince, and everyone believes him, and they want to be his friend, and so he throws these big-ass parties in his hotel room for all his new
Where is he getting these money from? The credit card thing?
friends. But unfortunately, one night, in his hotel room, boom, two of his guests rob him. And so he calls the police to report it. And then police show up, and even to the police he lies and says, I'm a Saudi prince. And so I guess the police reach out to the Saudi embassy, and the Saudi embassy's like, Prince who? That guy's full of shit. And so eventually, bam, Anthony is arrested, and he goes to jail. And he's actually there for quite a while, because it's not until about a year later that he gets out on bail. Then he goes right back to scamming. He goes to an American Express office, and he tells them he's a Saudi prince, and that not only was his credit card stolen, but that card had a $200 million credit limit. And then he screams at the agent to get his way, and by some miracle, I guess this works, and they give him a new American Express card with a $200 million spending limit. But, unfortunately for him, it's not long before, bam, he's caught again. And he actually gets caught a bunch of times. Here's his mugshot. And also, here's another mugshot from a different time he got caught. But anyway, bro goes to prison a couple of times because he just won't stop telling people that he's a Saudi prince and conning them. And around 15 years go by. And at this point, you would think that Anthony would give up. But no. Not only has he not given up, he keeps trying to perfect this scheme and make himself more and more believable as this fake prince. And one day in 2015, he decides he wants to level up. And that is when he meets this guy, Carl. Carl's a British businessman, he's an asset manager, and he really likes Anthony. And so they come up with a plan to con people together. First, Anthony needs to get people to unquestionably believe that he's a Saudi prince. So he goes all in. He starts dressing up, wearing the conventional clothing. He buys fake diplomatic license plates off eBay to put on his car. He even hires personal security to follow him around like he's so important. Then he starts involving his social media. Like he's living this life of luxury with nice cars, and he's going out on yachts, and even his dog wears a diamond body harness. And so he's posting about all this stuff on his Instagram account because, he's trying to make all of this as believable as possible. And by the way, my favorite post of his is it's just a picture of two random Saudi guys that he got off the internet, and the caption says, family. Man, that is not his family. This motherfucker is from Colombia. So anyway, Anthony and Carl set up a fake investment company for Anthony the Fake Prince, and they start recruiting people with money to invest in it. And to their credit, this actually works, because pretty quickly they've conned 26 investors into giving them over $8 million. And then Anthony starts selling shares in a legitimate Saudi royal family oil company. It's a legitimate company, but Anthony has nothing to do with it. He's just selling fake shares in it. And so all of this is working really well for them, and bro now has tons of money.
On to.
And he's showing it off because he wants everyone to know how rich he is. He's always tipping waitstaff with $100 bills. Every building he passes, he points to it and claims that his royal family somehow owns it. He rents a penthouse condo on a tiny private island. But see, the prince, he's royalty. No, he would never rent. So Anthony tells people that he owns the whole building. And no one in the community really questions him.
Bro going all out, bro.
They all believe him. In fact, some of them even start referring to him as Sultan or Your Highness. It's absurd. Bro is a menace. And it seems like with this many people believing him, he's never gonna get caught. Until one day in 2017, Anthony finally screws up because he meets an actual billionaire. This guy, Jeffrey. And now Jeffrey, he owns a nice hotel in Miami Beach, and he's looking for someone to buy a 30% stake in it. And so Anthony hears about this, and he's like, I'm a prince. I'll invest $140 million into this deal. Even though he doesn't have that kind of money, I guess he just wants to pretend to be rich. And so Jeffrey is like, sweet, I found a buyer. And the two of them start hanging out a bit, like they kind of become friends. But then Anthony starts telling Jeffrey that Jeffrey needs to shower him with gifts, because that's what's customary back in his home country of Saudi Arabia, and it's a sign of respect. And so Jeffrey does, because he doesn't want to be rude, and so he starts buying him jewelry and expensive art, and he takes him on flights in his private jet. Jeffrey is really trying to win this prince over. But then, of course, this whole plan starts falling apart. Because one day, Jeffrey flies himself, Anthony, Carl, and some others on his private jet from Miami out to Aspen for a nice little luxury trip. And while they're there, they all go out to dinner. And that is when Anthony really screws up. Because when he orders his dinner, he orders prosciutto, a type of ham. And Jeffrey notices this, and he's like, wait a minute, isn't the Saudi royal family Muslim? Isn't pork for...
So they got caught. Boy wants pork.
forbidden for Muslims? So now he's suspicious. And so he has his team low-key start investigating Anthony, calling around, asking people about him. So then later, someone calls Anthony and tips him off like, hey, some of Jeffrey's people are calling around asking about you. And Anthony knows he's about to get exposed, and so to try and get out of this, he doubles down. In front of everyone, he makes a scene, and he has a huge meltdown, screaming at everyone, how dare you doubt me? I'll sue you. I've never been so disrespected in my life. I mean, it gets really intense, and everyone goes back to their hotel room mad. The next day, at breakfast, the prince's team tells Jeffrey, hey, to keep the prince interested in purchasing your hotel, you need to buy him a nice gift, like something worth at least $50,000. And of course, this makes Jeffrey even more suspicious. But he plays along. He's like, alright. But eventually, he gets the FBI involved, and they investigate. And as soon as the FBI sees photos of Anthony and they see his messed up teeth, they're now certain that he's a fraud. Because apparently Saudi royals are known for taking care of their teeth, and Anthony's teeth, they're not in the best shape. Anyway, so eventually, bam, they go and arrest him. Here's his mugshot. And since this is actually the 11th time he's been arrested
11 times?
for this con, he gets sentenced to 18 years in prison. And a huge shout out to Leonardo.ai for sponsoring this video. If you want to make really cool art for your videos or just for your life, like this or like this, then sign up for Leonardo.ai.
Mhm. So she got catfished.
So this radio host gets catfished by her fiance for almost 10 years. Now her name is Kirat, and she's in her 30s, and she's a radio host living in London. And one day in 2009, her cousin connects her with this guy on Facebook. His name's Bobby, and Bobby's a cardiologist, and he allegedly lives in the area. And so Kirat and Bobby, they start messaging back and forth, and Kirat does not think he is fine, as they are both currently in a relationship with someone else. So instead, they become friends on Facebook. But then, one night, Kirat's out at a bachelorette party, and suddenly, boom, she sees Bobby across the room. And she's all drunk, and she goes up to him like, Bobby! And he nods like, sup? I mean, it's 2 a.m., it's crowded, the music's super loud, so they don't really talk. However, they do keep talking online, through Facebook, and at some point, Bobby tells her
So why they couldn't talk at the club?
he's going to Kenya to visit some family, and he leaves and he goes to Kenya. Sometime later, Karat's at work, and she gets a phone call, and it's her cousin. You know, the cousin who connected her online with Bobby. We'll just call her Cousin. And Cousin is a little younger than Karat, but they're close friends. And so Cousin is on the phone and she's freaking out like, you know, Bobby's in Kenya and he's been shot and it's bad and I don't know if he's gonna make it. And Karat's like, oh no, he's been shot? That sucks. And you know, she's sad and all, but honestly, she doesn't really know him that well. But then Bobby dies. And so Cousin breaks this news to Karat. And I guess Karat's like, oh, that's a bummer. But then, a few months later, Cousin hits up Karat again and is like, actually, we were lied to. Bobby isn't dead. He's actually hiding out in New York City. I guess he's in witness protection for some reason. And so Karat hits Bobby up on Facebook and they start talking again. And you know, he can't tell her much about what happened to him because he's still in the hospital from being shot, and also he's in witness protection. Regardless, they start chatting a lot, about a lot of things. He tells her he just got divorced and that's been really hard on him. He tells her he's been having all sorts of health issues like stroke and blood clots. And over time, they grow really close. They chat every day online. She even chats with his medical team, and she chats with his ex-wife. She chats with his sisters and his friends
How would you talk with his ex-wife for?
on Facebook. And this goes on for years. Then, one day in 2015, everything changes. Because old Bobby, he drops a bomb on her. He tells her that he's always loved her. And Karat tells him that she loves him. And so pretty quickly, they're in a full-blown relationship. And now they're talking all the time, and they're sending each other sweet messages all the time. Well, actually, Bobby's vocal cords are damaged because of the stroke. He's paralyzed on one side, so he doesn't talk. He actually texts her, and Karat replies to him with audio messages.
I love you. I missed you so much today, sweets. So much. I really hope you're not too down.
Is this the actual audio?
And so a year goes by, and this long-distance relationship is still going strong. Like, they're still chatting every day. But now they'll do Skype calls. But his vocal cords are still damaged, so he kind of has to talk in a whisper. But they do talk. But not only that, at one point, he proposes to her through Facebook Messenger. How romantic. And then like a dozen or so of Bobby's friends are hitting her up on Facebook, congratulating her. And Bobby and Karat are like picking out wedding venues and outfits, and they're looking at engagement rings online together. I guess they're like just sending links back and forth to each other. I mean, shit is getting pretty serious between them. However, unfortunately, Karat is starting to get a little frustrated with Bobby because he keeps saying he'll come visit her at some point in London. However, every single time, he has to suddenly cancel his trip last minute. Like, oh, witness protection is moving me again, or, oh, I had another stroke. And to make it worse, he's getting a bit controlling. Like, he's jealous, and he's constantly checking in, making Karat video chat with him to see where she is. But of course, he never turns his camera on. And so this isn't going quite as well as she had wanted. But then, one day, she gets a little bit of hope. Cause finally, Bobby hits her up, and he's like, Sugar Plum, I'm coming to London. And Karat's like, oh snap, I finally get to see him in person. And she's all excited, and she's so nervous. Oh my god, what is she gonna wear? She's following his flight tracker online to see when his plane lands. However, unfortunately, in true Bobby fashion, right before they're supposed to meet, he hits her up, and he tells her
He can't make it.
that he can't make it. And of course, this makes Karat really upset, and she lets him know.
Broken my heart, shattered my dreams. I thought you loved me. I love you, but I can't do this.
Now, at some point, she's starting to feel like something's not right about all this. Like, he's always canceling his visits at the last minute. I mean, she's been chatting with him online for 9 years at this
9 years.
point. And the only time she's ever met him in person was that one night at the bachelorette party all those years ago. So, like, what is his deal? Something feels off. So she goes and she hires a private investigator to look into Bobby. And private investigator must have some serious skills because pretty quickly, boom, he finds that Bobby actually has a house. And oh, he's not living in New York City in witness protection. He actually lives in England, about an hour away from her in Brighton. And Karat is pissed. She's like, bro's been living an hour away from me this whole time and lying about it? Oh, hell no. And she drives the fuck over to his house, ready to confront him. And so she gets there and she knocks on the door. And guess who answers? Bobby's wife. He's married. Oh, but it gets worse. Karat tells this woman, I want to talk to Bobby. And so Bobby comes out and Karat's like,
Wait, so the wife doesn't have him on Facebook added, or he just made another account?
why did you lie to me? And Bobby looks at her and he's like, I don't even know who you are. And so poor Karat drives home in shame. And she's crying and she calls her cousin and her cousin tries to console her. But it's no use. She's sad. She's confused as hell. I mean, what the hell is going on? Bobby's married? Like, is she ever gonna find out the truth? Until the next day, Karat is chilling at home and she hears a car pull up outside. She opens her front door and it's Cousin. And that is when Cousin drops a bomb on her. And this is probably the weirdest bomb anyone has
I bet it was the cousin texting her saying she was Bobby.
ever dropped on anyone ever. So Cousin has been catfishing Karat this whole time. And if you're confused, let's rewind to the beginning. One day in 2009, Cousin, I guess she gets bored and decides to make a fake Facebook account. A Facebook account
It be your own blood, bro. It be your own blood.
of a guy named Bobby. But here's the thing, Bobby is actually a real guy in the area. He just has no idea someone made a fake Facebook account of him. And so Cousin, posing as fake Bobby, she chats with Karat online for years. They message, they have Skype calls, she makes up stories about how she got shot and how she got put in the witness protection program. And they would talk through Skype and Cousin would disguise her voice by just like talking in a whisper.
It be your own blood. What kind of messed up shit is that?
And Cousin got Karat to fall in love with her. Well, fall in love with the fake Bobby. I mean, they made wedding plans. Not only that, Cousin made up to 60 fake Facebook profiles of fake Bobby's friends and family in order to fool Karat.
She gotta be a hater. She gotta be a hater to do that. 60? Bro, you don't have a life, bro? So you're telling me you sit down and made 60 Facebook accounts just for this, bro? You, he's a D1 hater.
It's all so elaborate and just weird. And just by sheer coincidence, Karat went out to that bachelorette party all those years ago and just happened to see the real Bobby out having a good time. That's why he didn't really talk to her that night. He didn't know her. And that's also why when Karat showed up to the real Bobby's house, he's like, I don't even know who you are. Because he doesn't. He's never met her. Now, why is Karat's own cousin catfishing her and getting into a romantic relationship with her? Unfortunately, we don't know. Cousin never comes forward and gives a valid explanation, so we're just like, I don't know. However, Karat does later file a lawsuit against her for all of this.
I would have done the same.
And they end up settling out of court, and Cousin has to pay her an undisclosed amount. So, I guess that's nice.
Bro, your own cousin. It was the time Bobby had convincing his wife he really didn't know this woman at the door. Who needs anyway when you have a cousin like this? The, the cousin is a hater, bro. Hell, that's it.